Hey everybody, so today I wanted to share with you guys the 12 books that I read in January, my thoughts on them, a little review, go through them with you guys, just kind of like a little wrap up of everything that I had read in January and share my thoughts about them. Now, this isn't something that I normally do on my channel, but this is something every month I'm going to do just because it's something for me. So I understand if some of you aren't here for books, you're not into reading, or, something like this doesn't do exceptionally well on my channel. I'm completely fine with that. I just want to share with you guys the books that I've been loving, what I've been reading, things like that. Before I get started, if you want to follow updates as to like what I'm reading or in time kind of reviews, stuff like that, I will have my book Instagram linked down below and also my Goodreads as well, because that's the places where I just update daily, or obviously on Goodreads whenever I finish something, so you might be able to get a sneak peek as to what I'm doing throughout the month versus waiting for this. But if you want to watch this or just wait for this to come out, I totally appreciate that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I've been getting a lot of messages on Instagram that kind of have been comparing how many books I've read versus how many that person has specifically read, and I just want you guys not to feel bad. I read 12 books in January, but I might read 2 books in March. I might read 1 book 1 month. It's not about a competition. It's not like me versus you or anything like that. We all read at our own pace and we do what we enjoy, and that's what reading should be. It should never feel like you have to compete with people. If reading brings you joy, read as much as you want. Please keep that in mind as I'm going over these books that I've read, because I'm sure some months I'm going to pop on here and I'm going to have 2 books to tell you guys about, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I just want to read what I like and spend time doing that. I'm going to just work from the first book to the last book. That's just how I'm going to do it. Okay, so the first book that I read this year is a tradition that I think I want to keep going for future ones, and for Christmas I asked my husband to get me a book. He did, and that was the first one that I read this year. So I think I want to keep that going from here on out, but it was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, the book that he got me, and I had heard a lot about this book, and I was wondering if the hype would be worth it. It is about a high schooler named Pippa solving a crime in her last year of high school. It sounds like it's going to be cliche and cheesy, and honestly, I was worried it would be, but it wasn't at all. I was actually pretty impressed with the communication levels of everybody in the story. Nothing was too far-fetched or unrealistic, and it was all delivered in a really cool way. There's some email excerpts, and it was just, I don't know, all around a really good book, and it was a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. The only thing was I felt like Pippa was sometimes oblivious, but I mean, it is a young adult book and she is a young adult. I'm not even clear if she was 18 in the book or not. So it's quite possible that she is still a child. So, it's not always going to be there with young adults, and I try to give them that grace. But it wasn't anything too crazy. I just felt like my old lady spidey senses were tingling when Pippa seemed oblivious to stuff, but I've also probably watched one too many true crime documentaries. So all around, I felt like this was a really great way to start my year. I gave it 5 stars, and I was really impressed by it. I know it has a couple other books, and some people say that the other 2 aren't as good as this one, but I'm still very interested in them, and I'm going to check them out because of how great this one was. So if you like true crime and a young adult book, definitely recommend that one. Some of the other books are on my Kindle or I got from the library, so I will be inserting pictures because I don't have a physical book. And the next one that I read in the year was one I got from the library, and it's A History of Wild Places. I was so eager for this book, and it by far is the biggest letdown that I've had all year. I gave it 2 stars, and I did not enjoy this book. I mean, it wasn't terrible, it's nothing awful, but I really did not enjoy it. I felt like the first chunk of the book was unnecessary for where the story ends up going. Like, I got really attached to a character for it to not matter at all the kind of background that they were giving on this person and all this in-depth stuff, and it was like, I was actually enjoying that part of the book, and then it just drops off flat. And I was like, okay, it's fine, and I kind of felt like I wasn't enjoying it, but I wanted to stick with it because I was so eager for this book. The characters just constantly contradicted themselves, which plays into the storyline, but it gets old really, really quick, and I just all around did not like how it was playing out. I could see what was happening from a mile away, which was okay. I really don't mind that as long as like the rest of the book is really great, but it wasn't that for me. And then the ending, I was like, no. I was about to give it 3 stars, but with that ending, I gave it 2 because I just could not understand the ending for the life of me. So I didn't like this one, but that's not to say that it's not for you, or if you enjoyed it, that there's anything wrong with that. Everybody likes something different, but this was a huge bummer. I was really looking forward to it. This color is one of, well, probably my most favorite color of all, like that green, deep teal kind of thing. That's my favorite color of all time. So like that whole book just kind of pulled me in, and I loved the idea of it, but it just did not execute for me. So the next book was another one that I got from the library, and that was Rock, Paper, Scissors. And I was very eager about this one, and honestly, because of how eager I was, after A History of Wild Places, I was a little hesitant. I was a little worried because I was like, last time I got my hopes up, it did not work out well. However, I'm so happy to say that this book is probably one of my favorite books. It just, it was so good. It was so refreshing. It was a really fast read for me. I gave it 5 stars. I'm not stingy with those at all. So, you're going to hear a lot of 5 stars in my wrap-ups because that's how I feel. The only thing I didn't like was reading so many chapters about a couple that obviously wanted nothing to do with each other and was completely uninterested at the marriage at this point, but it's going somewhere. Trust me. And it's not just going the places that you think it's going. It's one of those things where it can get repetitive after a while, but as soon as I started hitting that point where I was like, okay, this is getting old, things started heating up, things started changing, and I was like, okay. And that's where the twists and the turns start unfolding. So it's about a couple who takes an anniversary trip, and strange things start happening because there is a big snowstorm that traps them there. And I know that sounds really cliche, but I promise it's not going any direction that you think it is. It's worth the read. And there's multiple point of views, and because of that, I feel like it went even faster for me. And like I said, once you get past like the bickering couple, like the kind of setting up of how things are, it really starts to unravel quickly and in ways that just bent my mind. So yeah, 10 out of 10. Highly recommend this one, and I want a physical copy because this book was so great. Next up is another library pick, and that is Reckless Girls. And this author is an immediate reserve, pre-order kind of author for me, although I do try to reserve it at my library first if I can, just to make sure that I absolutely love the book, and this was no exception. So this is by the same author who wrote The Wife Upstairs, which I believe was in my top 10 from last year. So I thoroughly enjoyed that book because of the profanity, because it felt really realistic, and I really enjoyed this book as well. Now, I feel like this book hasn't been as thoroughly loved as the other one. I heard a lot of mentions of people saying that it was catty and there was like some typical kind of girl drama going on, but I didn't mind it. I really didn't. If you can watch some Desperate Housewives, you can get on with this. It's nothing crazier than that. It's about a girl and her boyfriend. They're taking people out to this island. They meet a couple who is already there. They're just staying there for a couple of weeks, and then things start changing, things start unfolding, and gets a little freaky, gets a little twisted, and I really enjoyed this book. I felt like I could see where the plot was going, but again, I love the way that Rachel writes, and everything else about the story really just followed through for me, so I don't mind a predictable ending as long as everything else is okay. And there was even parts in the ending that truly did shock me, so that was appreciated as well. Even if some things did play out how I thought they were, there were other surprises waiting for me in there. And, if you like a heavy use of profanity and you can watch some Desperate Housewives, I truly think that you're gonna like Rachel Hawkins' books because they're just great. But yes, this was a 5-star read for me as well. All right, finally back to a physical copy book, and that is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I had this book sitting around for months. I bought it because of book talk, because so many people who like Colleen Hoover just have absolutely great things to say about this book. I think A History of Wild Places really did a number on me because I was so hesitant to try out all these books that I had been looking forward to. But I finally dived into this, and wow, I don't think a Colleen Hoover book has ever taken me longer than a couple of days to read because she just writes in a way that makes you want to gobble up a book whole. The ending was very heartbreaking, but in the best way possible. It's about a girl named Lily, and she is getting into a relationship, and she is having that unfold before her, and things start happening, things start changing, and there is also a past love interest that starts getting brought into everything, and it's one of those books that I think highlights you don't know what you would do in that situation until you're in it yourself. I feel like with any Colleen Hoover book, you should definitely check the content and trigger warnings, just because she does write about some really heavy stuff. So just make sure that you check that out and you read up on that before you dive into Colleen Hoover. But if you are comfortable with it, I think this is well worth the read. It was just, and just the other day, she announced that there is also going to be a sequel to this book. So everyone is very excited. The sequel is going to come out in October. So I'm very, very excited for that. But Colleen Hoover is another one of those like instant put on hold and pre-order kind of authors, but this did not let me down, and I was so glad. Next up, another Colleen Hoover book, one that came out this year, Reminders of Him. I read It Ends With Us kind of as I was preparing to dive into this one, and I actually got the copy that I read from the library, but I finished that quickly, returned it as quick as possible because there were several people online, and then I bought my own copy because that's how much I enjoyed it. So I did like It Ends With Us. I did give that 5 stars, but I think this is probably my most favorite work of Colleen Hoover's yet. So this is about a mom named Kenna. She was in prison, she gets out, and there is very difficult family matters happening. Obviously a love interest because it's Colleen Hoover, and it's all about her just trying to build her life back and to get it back and to fight for what she wants and a lot of other things, but wow. It's not very often that I resonate with a male character, but I loved Ledger in this book. I feel like he's a gold standard as far as some of the love interests and books go, and I really enjoyed him. I actually followed his timeline with how he felt about Kenna, the main character, quite spot on, honestly, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. A lot of times this book was hard to read just because you so desperately want things to work out in a way, but it's an uphill battle, and it's one that just slowly is unfolding, and in true Colleen Hoover fashion, she finishes it with a bang. So another 5-star read from Colleen Hoover. So the next one is A Flicker in the Dark, and this one is another one I got from the library. Again, really looking forward to this one, and it did not let me down, I'm very happy to say. So it is about a girl whose father was a serial killer. I felt like Chloe could be a little stubborn and kind of erratic at times. I really wish that she would have reached out for help more often and more open with the people around her. But at the same time, it wasn't difficult to read. I really did like how this story unfolded. I went from hating a character to absolutely loving a character so quick in this book. So quick. I think the quickest I ever have. So it was another 5-star read for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. So the next book is All We Hold Dear. This is a book that I got early off of NetGalley. If you don't know what NetGalley is, you can sign up, you make a profile, and you can request books to read early as long as you give reviews and feedback to the authors or publishing companies, whoever. And you don't always get approved for everything, but this was one that I did get approved for, and I really enjoyed it. It's from a lawyer's point of view. So he's taking on a family annihilation case, which is really heavy and, really sad, but things aren't what they seem, and it's all about putting those pieces together. And even though I felt like I could guess the ending in some parts, it was still a really great book. The ending still had surprises for me. So even though you could slowly see those pieces coming together, it wasn't like just kind of falling flat and like there was nothing else to it. It was a really interesting book. It's also pretty short, so it's a quick read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Next up is a book that I got from Book Talk as well. It's called There's Someone Inside Your House. I really wish that this wasn't actually on the cover. Why did we stop doing stickers? I don't want this on here, but regardless, this was actually really inexpensive. I think I got it from either Target or Walmart, and you can see how much I liked it. So I don't tab on my books. That's a question I get fairly often. I just tab when I find things either resonates with me, I really enjoy how it was written, but mostly it's just about me really relating to something that was said. It's about a serial killer that is killing kids at a high school. So it is, again, like a murder mystery with high school students kind of storyline, which, again, if authors aren't careful, can get really redundant and cliche and just kind of boring and uninteresting. But this was done so well, like amazingly well. And I really felt like this is kind of how these books should be done. Nobody was off bets. You know, I'd get so attached to a character just to read about how they died like 2 pages later. And it honestly kind of scared me a little bit to read at night, which is not easy to do. You guys know I'm a horror fan, so it's not very often where I'm like actually a little spooked, and I was with this book. So it kind of got to me. It's definitely gory. It's definitely pretty gruesome as well. And I felt like, as far as it came with the teenagers, they were actually really good role models. Like, their communication was really top notch. I don't know, just everything about them wasn't hard to read. There's also a little young adult romance going on in there as well, and everything about it was just really so good. And even though you learn who the killer is at like the 75% mark, you don't learn his motive until the very end, which I felt like balanced it out really, really well. Because even though you figure out who it is, you're like, but why? But why? And you're just, left with that until at the very end they give it to you and you're like, wow, okay, so this is amazing. This is amazing. If you watch this on Netflix, it is nothing like that movie. That movie was trash and I did not finish it. There, I said it. So I read the book first, and obviously with it saying that it was on Netflix, I was like, of course I'm going to watch it because I loved the book. Loved it so much. There were so many different things wrong with that movie. They changed so many things that were unnecessary in the book. So if you saw that movie and you didn't enjoy it, the book is 1,000 times better. So it's definitely worth a read. Can't believe Netflix did that book so dirty, but they did. So the next one is by one of my favorite authors, and that's Lucinda Berry. So this is Perfect Child. Lucinda Berry's Best of Friends was my favorite book of 2021. I just love the way that Lucinda writes and the way that she writes these different thrillers and suspense and mysteries. It just all feels so realistic. Like you're in time with these people, and nothing about it is unrealistic. It's not just this far-fetched thing that you have a hard time wrapping your brain around. It just is something that it feels like you're there experiencing it and you're seeing it unfold, but you're unable to stop it or get the characters to do something different. She, again, is one of those authors where I will automatically pre-order or reserve a book. A lot of her books right now are on Kindle Unlimited. If you want to read Best of Friends or this one, that is where I get a lot of her books right now. So highly, highly recommend checking out either of these books. But The Perfect Child is about a couple who have had problems conceiving, so just keep that in mind before you start the book, and they decide to go the adoption route. And the mother is a nurse, the father is a doctor, and they come across this girl who has shown up at the hospital who is suffering from obvious abuse, and they decide to slowly care for this child. So at first it was in a professional setting, and they decide to foster her until she can find a home, and then it becomes clear, because they both know how to take care of her medically but also personally, that maybe she just fits best with their family. So then, they bring her home. I felt like this book was done really respectfully. Obviously, abused children is a sensitive subject, and I don't like when abuse or mental illness or anything like that is painted as like, this makes a monster, an unredeemable monster. And I felt like Lucinda did a really good job handling this topic in a very respectful way. So I was really impressed with that. I don't want to give too much away. You just got to read it to understand it, and you got to trust me. But obviously it's heavy. It's a heavy subject here. It tackles a lot of hard subjects, but Lucinda does it justice. Like, the story that unfolds is truly just blows my mind. I felt like most of the reviews were upset with how it ended, and I have to say, I agree with people. It felt like the end of a chapter, not the end of the book, and I really would have liked for Chris, the dad, to really just be smacked by reality, because he was definitely part of the problem. So I would have loved to see that read about it, I guess I should say, but obviously I'm picturing it all up in my head. So that would have been nice, but I all around really enjoyed this. This was probably one of the wildest rides I'd ever been on when it came to a book. And I feel like if you can handle some emotional turmoil, then it definitely is worth a read for you. I probably would have given it 4.5 stars because of the ending and how it felt like it just kind of broke off. But Goodreads doesn't let you do 4.5, so I rounded up with 5 because everything else about the book I really enjoyed. Last 2 books, the first one being Voices from Chernobyl. This is actually a book I've had in my own collection for a long time. Chernobyl is something that, I don't know, interests me a lot. It's something that I find myself reading a lot of books on, a lot of different things about. I love learning more about it. So I was very interested in this book. I did not read too much about it other than I had heard other people recommend this, and I was looking at the reviews of the book itself, and my understanding of it was that it would be like a chronological order of what happened at Chernobyl. I was completely wrong, but I'm glad I was wrong. So this is an oral history given by different people. Literally anybody that you could think of that might have been somehow affected by Chernobyl brings a point of view from them. So it's not just the frontline workers who were there. It's not just the people who were evacuated, even though those are very important people. But there's also so many other layers, so many other people that you don't think about who would be involved with this, that their point of views are given. And it's very, very interesting. I mean, a lot of it is really hard to read. Obviously, this is a devastation on a huge level. So to read about it and what it meant for those people individually was absolutely heartbreaking. And, you know, it's just one of those things that's really tough to read, but I think it's super important. People were telling their stories here, and I'm glad that I was wrong. This kind of history is just as important as a chronological, fact-checked kind of history given on a topic. The people's account is also very important as well. So this was definitely like a heavy read for me. It was very sad because you are reading about people's actual lives. It's nonfiction, but it's very, very important. So if you are interested in Chernobyl, learning more about it, and you can, handle that, it's definitely worth a read. And lastly, one I didn't enjoy so much, I gave it 3 stars, and I think literally the only thing I wrote in the review on Goodreads was meh. And that is Love by Night. So this is a book of poetry. I love poetry and books like this. However, they're not all created equal, which I hate to say that because I feel like when you write poetry, everyone just has their truth, putting out into the world what they want. Poetry is really subjective, I guess is what I'm getting at. But I just felt like this fell a little flat for me. I don't know. So I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. So that's why I gave it 3 stars and I said meh. It was okay. Nothing profound, nothing awful either. Like, it's not like I wouldn't recommend it, but it is told by 2 different point of views, and it's about 2 people falling in love. So I found that interesting. It was a little bit different than the usual poetry book that I've read. So yes, that was the very last book of this month, and I am very excited to share next month. So I'm already kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I am truly excited because I have read 2 of my favorite books of all time this past month in February, and I'm so eager and excited to share them with you guys because I did not see them coming, and I'm so glad that I have them and I can share them with you. So, if you like this kind of video, make sure to give it a thumbs up so I know that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments below how many books you read this month and which one was your favorite. If you guys have any questions, also leave them down there. I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, thanks for watching.